So today we're going to be talking about livestock implications on water quality and things that you can do to help improve water quality on your farm. And the reason that this is a concern and why you should care about it is because water is a limited resource, especially here and especially this year. Also, properly managing animal waste is really important for water quality, like total dissolved solids, pH, nutrients, and generally like making sure that you have healthy aquatic systems and habitats. Also, what you do in your small farm affects everyone downstream from you. So it's really important to be a good steward of those resources so that you're not negatively impacting other people down the line. Next slide. And some of the ways that livestock most impact waterways are excess nutrients, primarily nitrogen, phosphorus from manure. Those can fuel not only algal blooms, but also just excessive like plant growth. I get a lot of calls from people who think that they have a harmful algal bloom, but really they just have a whole lot of like filamentous green algae or other aquatic plants and weeds. It can also cause low oxygen conditions, which is really bad for fish. Um, Also, the sediment from erosion caused by trampling. Um, if you have a lot of bare ground, like if they have grazed too too much and you have a lot of bare ground and you have a lot of livestock in a small area, that can increase your turbidity, so the amount of sediment that is in your water, and that really harms aquatic habitat. Also, those livestock walking around, loafing, generally hanging out, compact the soil, and that decreases the pore air spaces in the soil. And when it does rain, water instead of soaking into the soil and being available for plants and functioning like it's supposed to, that water is going to run over the surface and pick up more excess nutrients and more soil and things like that. And it's going to contribute to non-point source pollution. Also, pooping in the water is not great for bacteria and pathogens. So it can be a public health issue. And a lot of times, the cows want to be where the water or other animals want to be where the water is. And so they're going to hang out and they're going to poop in the water. And when it rains, that if they're pooping on the banks, it's going to run off into the water as well. And when that organic matter breaks down, it's going to consume a lot of oxygen in the water as it decomposes. And that is really not great for the fish and the invertebrates that are in our systems. Okay, next slide. The biggest hotspots on your farm are riparian areas, which are the vegetated areas on either side of a creek or a river. And then stream crossings. A lot of people, need to be able to move their animals from one side of a stream to another or get heavy equipment from one pasture to another. So stream crossings are really important, but they can also be a big source of problems. Areas where you water your animals are kind of a hot spot, and then corrals and where you store your manure, the manure in the corrals, and then where you store it if you like scoop it or clean your stockyards. And this picture is just a pond that I got a call about, and they thought they had an algal bloom, but it was really just excessive nutrients causing excess plant growth, like aquatic plant growth. So I just thought it was a good picture. Next slide. And this is a photo of some riparian areas for a project. And this was a participant in our Small Farms Water Quality Grant Program a few years ago. And I can't remember where it is, but you can see from this picture where the cattle are going into the stream is really compacted. There's not a lot of vegetation. The vegetation that's there is pretty mowed down. There's not a lot. There's not a lot of plants along that stream bank. And when you have a healthy riparian area, it's going to help filter a lot of the nutrients that are running off over the surface of your property into the creek. It's going to help filter that out. So if you have a really healthy riparian area, then it acts as a filter. And so you can see in these photos that that is not happening. There's also a lot of compaction. There's kind of these photos don't show it, but steep banks can be a problem where, cattle are causing a lot of erosion going up and down really steep slopes. You can go to the next slide. And this is the same property after the owner put in fencing to exclude animals from the riparian area. So I think it was the next season, so it hadn't been a long time to get a lot of good vegetation growth, but you can see some of the taller grasses closer to the creek. You can see that the crossing area is still a little compacted, but it's better than it was before. You're getting some other like larger vegetation too. I think that they reseeded here. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that they reseeded after they put the fencing in. But you can see it's on its way to looking a lot healthier. And then next slide. And stream crossings. So it's really great if you can stabilize the area either with gravel or geotechnical fabrics. Like they usually it's like a web and you fill them with gravel or dirt or another product. Or you can do a bridge or a culvert or some kind of ford to be able to, in the picture, you can see that they used gravel, but really you just want to make sure that you stabilize the soil because it's not going to be like lush forage in that area. You're not going to have a lot of vegetation because it's getting used. Pretty frequently. But that is a great thing to be able to include. Next slide. As far as animal watering goes, if you can get water troughs, a lot of people use solar pumps to pump water to upland areas and put in a stock tank. Livestock will decrease the amount of time spent in the riparian area by up to 90% if an alternative water source is provided. So that can be really impactful. And even if you don't necessarily fence out the riparian area, like if you can't afford to do that, just moving waterers to upland areas can make a really big difference. You can also put supplements and shade in upland locations, and that will encourage them to spend more time up there. And you'll also end up getting better utilization, more even utilization of the forage in those areas. So it can be great. This picture is of a solar pump and a waterer. And if you want to go to the next slide, I have a couple of other examples. So in the top two photos, that is the same location, and they had a spring or like a seep that they were using to water the animals. I'm not 100% sure what's going on with the fencing around that because the animals did have access to it, but it was one of their primary watering areas. And so they put in a pipe and a pump and they put it into a watering trough, and you can see there's still some compaction and not a lot of great, it's not great around the waterer, but you can see just a few feet away that the vegetation is really healthy. So it's really helping keep that area less muddy, keep the water cleaner for the animals to drink, and generally a lot better. In the lower two photos, the one on the left is a box culvert, I believe, and it's a water intake from the river, and it is fenced off. It's not a great photo. It was the only one I had though. And then they also had a really big solar panel to pump water up to multiple of these larger stock tanks that are pictured on the lower right. So that's the same property. And that is a larger, like a rangeland situation, not necessarily a small farm. But I thought it was a good example of another type of like water intake pump waterer situation. And then
you've got 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay, thank you. I have a timer going, but thank you for the heads up. For corrals and manure management, you want to make sure that you have adequate space and that you clean it regularly. You want to avoid placing your corrals in low spots. If you've got natural drainage channels from coming off of those corrals, you can use berms or swales or vegetated areas to kind of filter and change the flow of that water. So vegetated buffers around your corrals or between your corrals and the water are really great. Um, Also, if you have soil with either low permeability or concrete, that can help. And you want to make sure that you store your manure above the water table. You can do the next slide. And three take-home questions that I thought might be helpful. Where, if you can figure out where does the water flow on my property, where are my heavy use areas, and what's one improvement I can make this year? And if you do that every year, you don't have to do everything all at once, but if you can make a little change every year, those impacts are gonna be compounded and you'll end up making a larger impact over time. Does anybody have any questions?